I'm going to tell you something that will change your lives forever. And that's a bold statement, I know. But I can explain why God doesn't answer your prayers. Why your God isn't here anymore. And I will give you the answer for that. I can do that. But if you truly want to understand it, you will have to listen to the explanation. I'll give you the right answer right here. Your God isn't here and doesn't answer to your prayers because the world is in chaos. There's too much going on, and it's easier and more exciting to be somewhere else. Now I'm going to tell you a story. But before that, I want to ask you something. If you were a god, how would your world look like? What would you do? I want you to reflect on that. I'm actually going to tell you two stories, because the first story will be about the one telling the story. About me. I was only 13 years old when I was so majorly depressed that I was actively thinking about killing myself. That is heavy for a 13-year-old. I had times where I walked from school and one out of two things happened. Either I disassociated so much that I couldn't even remember walking home, or I was there. Every single step was painful. When I walked on the sidewalk and a car flew by, my first initial thought was, how long do I have to wait before I jump out so it won't be able to break? I thought that, but I never did it. Something held me back. And I'm not telling you this so you'll be disgusted, or so you feel sad for me, or any other overwhelming feeling. Now I'm telling you this so you can understand where I come from. And so you can see that there is a possibility, there is a way to change. There is a way to climb up from the darkest, deepest of holes. But it is hard to do alone. It's near impossible. So the story I want to tell you is the understanding of how to do that. But in order to do that, it requires change. Change is essential. And in order to change, you have to become something else. That is scary. One of the most different things you have to become is scary. Because if you are one way, you want to become something else, it is very different. It is outside the comfort zone. And you like being in a comfort zone, right? You all do. Most people do. But that is not where change happens. You have to get out of that and become someone else to do the things you want. Change the input to change the outcome. If you're not content, if you're not happy with your life right now, you have to change who you are. So that person on the other side will have the things you want. Now there are especially two things that hinders change. One of them is that the change itself is difficult. Because you don't know where you're going. You know what you want, but you don't know how to get there, or you don't know who that person is going to be, or how to become that person. You are fumbling around in the dark. Now, I had to do this on my own, because I didn't have any guidance. I didn't have any person to tell me, this is how you do, this is who you should become, this is how to get there. I never had that. I tried to figure it out. I tried to find someone, and I found some people, but they never could. I had to do it myself. And I don't want you to do that. I want to offer guidance. I want to offer you a clear path, an understanding that makes being blind not an option. The other thing is what's pulling you back. It's all the incentives, all the good feelings. Because like I said, change is scary. So everything that draws you back, whether it be, well, depending on the change, your family or your friends, the society in its whole, or just that comfort zone. They are actively keeping you from becoming the person you should become. Now for some people, like me, if the reason is that you're being bullied, or you have enemies, they will be probably the biggest reason holding you back, because they keep dragging you down. So I also want to give you a way to block that out. Because you have to become someone robust, you have to become strong, but that is probably not who you are now. Now I don't know all of you, so I don't know your personal struggles, but I do know one thing, that most, if not any, and every person has struggles. It's a way of life. It's just how it is. And I can help you with that. I can offer guidance. I can make you see something you've never seen before. And in that way, you can see beyond the incentives. You can see beyond the bullies, the ones keeping you down, the ones holding you back, no matter what that looks like. Alright, so it's time to tell you a story. It is a story about birth, about development, about growth. In the beginning, in the very beginning, when you are born, I want you to picture a room. Now this room is where you start. Only thing in this room are the walls, a door, you have air conditioning, and there is one little vent here that provides food. So the temperature is fine. You get what you need, get drink, get food. It's just handed to you. But it's just a small little space, a small little room. And it's the only room you've ever known. It's the only room you think exists. This is where your conscience is born. You start here. So you have two options. You can start at ground, figuring out what's going on here, inside yourself, or yourself at all. Or you can try to see how the walls are located, the ceiling. Feel them. Try to get a sense of how the room actually looks like, because the door is shut and there is no windows, so everything is dark. So you don't have any reference to picture how it actually looks like. This is all you know. So what you do? You wait, you explore. You explore within the boundaries you have. And this is your world from the very beginning. Now, as humans, we develop naturally. It just sort of happens. So, when we are in the womb, we start growing more. We start being able to do more things. We suddenly hear it. And what do we hear? We hear voices outside. Outside the room. What? But there is nothing outside the room, is it? For the first time ever, you start to question if your reality is real. So how can you possibly know? Well, you can't. But you feel that there's something outside, and suddenly, sometimes, the wall's pushing in and back. So you know that something is going on, but you can't just wrap your head around why. And one day, you grow an attribute. You know what that is? Courage. Because this mystique, this mystery, knowing what's outside the room, that need to know grows stronger in you. So you start pushing the walls, trying to escape, trying to open the door. But the door is locked, the walls are sturdy, and they may be able to move an inch or two, but that's it. But you did find the courage to try, which is important, which is an attribute that will follow you your whole life. We don't keep that courage, do we? No, we don't. Because one day, door opens. And once that happens, it's not only light that comes into your room. There is light, there are voices, there are sounds, there are smells. The walls are starting to change and they grow much bigger. And suddenly you know that there is something out there that you didn't know. So what do? Well, most of us start crying. And then you close your eyes. And you go back to your safe room. You go back to the food you know. Trying to get that warmth in which you feel comfortable. And another attribute is born. Fear. Changing our reality, changing our world is scary. Change is scary. But I trust that all of you have changed since you were born. So you have found the courage. You did open your eyes just a little bit to see what was out there. Even though that meant all of the chaos in the room, the walls just shambling, creating new boundaries. So that there's light. And you can see what's going on. You can see how your room is actually looking. But you can't find the room anymore because you are somewhere else. You are something else. So this is where a subjective world is born. Once you closed your eyes and you were back, this is your subjective world. Now it has always existed, but you didn't know, because you thought that the subjective world and the objective materialistic world was the same. Now I say objective, why do we do that? It's because we also have the subjective one. And that is what you see that first time you open your eyes, when the door slams open and everything changes. That is how you perceive the reality, our world, so to speak. But our world is more than that. It is our world. It is the one we feel is the correct one. Now I know that people are different, so everyone will see the world in a different way. But this objective materialistic world is how we agreed that the world is. Some people, they don't like that. We call them crazy. Sometimes crazy people, those who are willing to change, those who are willing to see something else, are the ones who actually change the objective world. And I mean, look at this, look at what I have. A marker, a place to draw, light, electricity. You don't think electricity would be crazy some years ago? But that will be another discussion. So we agree upon the objective materialistic world. And you see that there is a difference between the subjective materialistic world, the one you were exposed to, and your subjective world, the one inside here. But you can't keep this out of this. Every time you're exposed to something, it downloads instantly, even without you knowing a lot of the times. So everything you see in here, everything that is real, is also part of you. Every time you experience something new, it will also be a part of you. And you have to regulate that. You have to figure that out so your borders are still in line, or they will be in shambles. Now I said we start with a room. What do you think happens when you get exposed to that, to the world? That room becomes a bigger room, becomes a building, with other walls, with other things around. And every time you get the courage to defy your fear, you see something else, learn something else. Except if you're in the same place at all times. It's an exposure. So how you're exposed to the world will make you a different person from who you were. And do you decide that yourself? Probably not as a kid, probably not as a baby. A little bit more when you're older. But I still think we're pretty bound to where we are, to money, to what we learn during growth. You are still bound. Now the thing is, as you get older, starting as a baby, physiological changes happen. One day, you'll be able to focus longer. Now at the start when you're born, you can almost not see anything. Everything is blurry from here on out. That is the way our bodies started to be able to actually comprehend the world as it is, because it is big. Especially these days, when we have everything. And this is one of the reasons why I'm telling you this story now. Because we have a need for it. So this room, building, soon enough it'll be a city. And once you get to that level, and that happens when you're still a little kid, you get exposed pretty fast. And you'll have to run that city and keep it in place. So it won't just burn to the ground. Be chaotic at all times. So the borders are still intact. And you can actually manage to keep that city. So what happens when you grow up? Other than building your world? Well, it's not getting more in touch with how you see the actual world. And those two places should be the same, shouldn't it? It's not at all. Because the subjective materialistic world is just how you perceive the actual world. But in here, many things are going on. We don't always like that, do we? No, it is simpler to be out here. So what we do is we go inside the objective materialistic world to learn. And it is objective because we are several people who are agreeing upon what this looks like. And how do you make sure of that? You ask, you compare, you see, you talk, you communicate. That's one of the first skills we learn. Not with words, but with body language. You try to communicate how things work, what you want in this place, together with everyone else that's also there. I like to think of it as an online game where you can log in and you can interact with everything, you can learn new skills. But the game is nothing without the other players. Or the game will be entirely different. Also, it will be boring. Now, the players make the game. The people create the world. Just like we create our own world from what we see. We try to build from what we have been exposed to. And we do that as good as we can. And luckily we got parents to help us with the blueprints. To help us create that city from the city they know, from the world that they've created throughout their lives. Not all of us are that fortunate. But at least most of us are. Because we need at least one person to be there for us, to guide us, to help us. Until that person becomes ourselves. And that is exactly what I want to help you with. Because make no mistake, you are your own God. You are creating a world. How is that not being a God? What you do, what you think, how you regulate yourself actually creates a world inside. And that changes how you perceive the actual world outside here that we all agree upon. So your thoughts, your ideas can change other people's worlds. How they look at their world. Sometimes this world is in chaos. And then how do you affect the others? What happens when you go into the objective materialistic world and talk with other people? If your world is in shambles, then you can try to fix your own. But what happens with radioactivity? Go change everyone else. And not necessarily for the good. and that creates guilt. Most people. I want you to let go of that guilt. Because it's not your fault that you haven't been able to stabilize that. Because you haven't had the proper guidance. You haven't been able to see how to structure the foundation correctly. So you've been trying to build without the correct blueprints, without the correct knowledge of how foundations work, how to create. Well, it's most likely that things will start falling down. And one thing is when you're a kid. Because when you're a kid, you have a lot of courage. So the fear isn't there to hold you back. So you try and you keep on building until you succeed. And then something happens, you grow up, next level, everything is in chaos again. Oh well, back on a horse. And then some time passes by. And you have your world, now kids have theirs. And you try to figure out what this is all about. And then you become a teenager. And once you become a teenager, it is difficult to say the least. Because that is a big change. And that is a change we all go through. And once again, your world, which isn't just a room anymore. No, it's not even a city. It is a planet. Which you have explored a lot of. You are creating a world with all the knowledge you have. Every single thing you've been exposed to ever. Not only from the objective world, no. Because your subjective world is a product of the objective world and what? Other people's subjective world. Because that is what creates the objective world, right? It is how you understand how other people you interact with understands the world. And that's why it's so extremely important that what you're exposed to is not too much at a time. Change is difficult because it requires time. It requires you to be something else. If you're being exposed to too much at once, well, it's being back to a teenager again. So you have a world, and then you learn that, well, your reality isn't real. Everything is different, because you're different. So you have to see it in another way. You have to build it again. And that's where many of us go wrong. Because our fear has grown larger. Because we don't want to be outside the norm, outside the box. And don't get me wrong, there are many of teenagers who have way too much courage and they end up doing stupid shit because they're trying to explore it, trying to figure it out. Why do they do that? Well, let's go back to this thing then. If you can't figure this out yourself, and you can't rely on your parents or mentor or whoever you have, or maybe you don't have, what can you do? If you can't figure all of this out yourself, which is highly unlikely that you will, you have to explore. You have to see someone else, someone who can give you the answers to how to stabilize everything. But you might not find it. What happens instead is that you create more chaos. You go through more things. And it doesn't matter if you explore the objective world, the objective materialistic world, and try to learn skills and try to see how things work, because it will always fill up your world with even more. So you need those other people to understand, to create structure. Or you can try to isolate yourself. Some people do that. They try to figure it out themselves. So they will just stay in the objective materialistic world to learn something, to deep dive into a few things that they can structure and learn, and then try to create their whole identity around that. And they're just trying to neglect everything else. And that's usually the end result, no matter what. Because if you dive into the objective materialistic world and you don't spend enough time here in your own place, you will still be in chaos. Not only that, you get more input. So the chaos you had will be even worse if you haven't already created the infrastructure that you need to keep it in order, to make sure things make sense. So you know where to put the different buildings, where to place the cities, how to create the world in a manner that works. So what I want to say with this is that imagine that happened now. If you already have it in a certain world, when you're grown up, maybe you're still a teenager. I don't know about you, but if I don't do something for many years, I tend to be worse at that skill. So if you haven't tried to stabilize your reality in a long time, if you haven't had your reality shattered and try to build it up again in a long time, it will be very difficult to do it again. So imagine if you had your world shattered at this point. Would it be for the better or the worse? I believe that with guidance, you can actually tear it all down and then create something beautiful with all the building blocks you have in the way you want, and become the person you want to be. Remember, you are your own God. But sometimes even gods need help. You don't need to figure out everything yourself. But I want you to become the person who does. I want you to get that strength, get that creativity, get all of those good attributes and learn it as a skill to build it up from the ground and to put it together in an order that works for you, to create your world the way you want it to be. Because our problem right now is that there is way too much input. We have social media, we have cell phones, we have internet. We have stress, we have people who are going down with stress already in their teenage years. Youthful people that can't handle the world anymore. You and me at 13. That was some time ago. That was even worse. And the more things, we're getting AI. Can you figure it out? Can you follow up with all that is happening right now? Our nervous system is at the very brink at all times. So we're trying to stop that information. We're trying to stop this funnel. So we just cut the ties and just stay here because it is easier to get lost in something, to create a bubble in which you can be, to just have a little place where you can see the structure, to get back to the room which all started because it felt safe, it felt comfortable. But that doesn't work. if you want to get further. That won't work if you want to change. This is taking a step back if you're staying in your bubble and you're too afraid of what happens outside it. Because the only people you'll find there are people who are like you, and you will never grow from there. It's comfortable, yeah? But it is not comfort you seek. It should be development. So you're able to face whatever's here. And it's way more difficult today. We have all that we need. Most of us, can't talk for everyone, of course, but I live in the Western society. We have way too much food. We have all these things. I have a cell phone that can do everything. I can look up all the knowledge I want directly to me in like 10 seconds. How do you filter that? How do you manage to keep that structured and intact? We're in a world where everyone can say anything. So you have no thing that can ground you. Nothing. Unless you're able to see how to structure it. So I want to say, if you understand this, if you understand where you are, what you're doing, let me finish with this. The reason why God, your God, whichever it is, doesn't listen to the prayers is because the world is in chaos. There's too much going on, and it's easier, more exciting to be somewhere else. The reason why you don't listen to your prayers, the reason why you don't fix your world, is because too much is going on. Your world is in chaos. And it is easier and more exciting to be somewhere else, so you don't have to deal with it. Now that you know that you are a God, what will you do? How will your world look like?